Hello, I'm Lynda Kinkade. Welcome to CNN Newsroom. We begin with a new anti-terror investigation launched in the French capital. It comes after a man was shot and killed at Paris Orly airport for trying to seize a soldier's gun. Melissa Bell is in Paris. Melissa, this suspect was known to authorities.
He was known to authorities for common law crimes, Lynda, things like drug trafficking and robbery. But we've also had confirmed to us by the Paris prosecutor's office that his home had already been raided in the context of the state of emergency that France was placed under in the wake of the November 15th attacks, which does suggest that there was some suspicion, perhaps, of his radicalization. Now, we should get a much clearer picture of exactly who this man was and what his motivations may have been and what we know about him so far, or at least what the investigation has uncovered when we hear from the Paris prosecutor, who's due to speak in an hour and a half time. Now, François Molins tends to give a lot of information in these press conferences, and we should have a much clearer picture of perhaps what this man was hoping to achieve as he set out this morning in the very early hours of the morning before being stopped at a police identity check, shooting on police, fleeing in his car, dumping that first car, hijacking another, carjacking another, before making his way to Orly Airport, as you said, France's second busiest airport, where he tried to wrestle a weapon from a female soldier before being killed by two of her colleagues. Now, France, as I say, remains under a state of emergency, and these kinds of patrols, these military patrols, are regular features at France's airport, and it is not the first time that they've come under attack, Lynda.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The airport, as you mentioned, was shut down. How many people were affected, and is it all back up and running now?
A couple of thousand, according to the police, were affected by this. And of course, it was a normal busy Saturday when all this began. Both of Orly's terminals were closed for several hours, and that of course created a fair amount of backlog, as you can imagine. It is not just a national airport, but an international one with regular flights all around the world that come and go from this airport. So a great deal of disruption here in Paris today, all the more so because the flights that should have landed and taken off from Orly Airport were then diverted to Charles de Gaulle for several hours. Both terminals now up and running, and the Parisian airport authorities tell us that they believe that the backlog, any sort of remaining backlog, will have been cleared over the course of the next few hours, and in any case by tomorrow morning. But a fair amount of disruption for travelers, as you can imagine. The entire perimeter of the airport had been cordoned off, and desperate passengers were trying to make their way to their flights, carrying their suitcases as best they could, leaving taxis as soon as they could to try and get to their flights, which of course had then been cancelled or delayed. So that backlog now being worked through here in Paris, Lynda.
Yeah, no doubt a lot of frustration for travellers. Melissa Bell, great to have you with us. Thank you. Well, let's look a little further into this latest attack and what it means for France. Glenn Scroon is a security management consultant and joins us now from The Hague. Glenn, French authorities are really trying to determine if this suspect was behind a terror plot. What do you make of this attack today?
Well, in a sense, it's a serious success for France again. After the horrific events of last summer, we've had a string now of at least 6 smaller incidents, people without firearms or big weapons, and one serious plot uncovered, of course, on the 10th of February in Montpellier in Paris. So it's again a success for France. It again shows that not the entirety of the threat here is big networks ready for big attacks and successful with these things. It shows here again today it appears to be an element of improvisation developing from the roadblock. One of the key questions, of course, for investigators will be whether or not the attempt at an attack here at Orly, if that was pre-designed, or if there are instructions floating about for assailants, so-called lone wolves, or people who might have a very small network around them, to now focus on sort of headline grabbing locations. Think of the Louvre 2 months ago and now at Orly. So even with no weapon, but sort of a desperate attack, they can still cause quite some disruption and create a headline.
Glenn, as we just heard from our correspondent there in Paris, his house was raided following the 2015 Paris attacks, which we know killed 130 people. You've mentioned a few other attacks that we've seen since that major one. Why are these attacks happening in France?
Well, France has for some years now, even before the emergence of ISIS or ISIL, been a focus for a number of these groups. It's had a large number of people traveling to conflict areas in Syria and Iraq, particularly over 2012, 2015. A lot of leadership has come from France, and a lot of these people have maintained a network and connectivity. And of course, right at this moment, one of the concerns is that these groups may try to play into the political process in France, given the fact we have presidential elections there in 5 weeks, and in another 12 weeks we have parliamentary elections in France. So concern right now is high that this may be a period in which these people will attempt to push their agenda and make headlines in order to influence the political process.
And just talking a little bit more about the timing of all of this, just a few days ago, the French Justice Minister spoke about lifting the country's state of emergency. And no doubt in your mind that that should remain in place.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. We've seen still indicators the last few months, the last few weeks, that threat is there. When we look at French investigators, when we look at the totality of the French counter-terrorist effort, the concern is there for further incidents. Even with this record of relative success, it's been smaller attacks. No big attack has been pushed through since last summer when we had the horrific incident in Nice in southern France on 14 July. Despite all of that, the hope was that things, with that improvement, that we could scale it all down a little bit. But I think the French government has sort of chosen for the safe option here, in the full realization that, unfortunately, there is a potential here for more incidents, even if they only remain small in the weeks ahead.
And let's hope they do remain small if there are future attacks. Glenn Scroon, great to have your analysis. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.